Well, friends, we're here for another exciting episode of On the Porch Radio Hour. And we have a really fun guest today. So fun that we just eliminated any other guest so that he could just be on the show. And then I'll get the chance to talk about me because that's what I do on the porch. I find every moment I can to talk about me and stuff that we're doing here at the farm. And since I'm talking about me, let me start the show by talking about me. I grew up always knowing that I wanted to be as close to Indiana Jones as possible. Like, that was going to be my life. I was going to be a real-life Indiana Jones. So when I was in a cave in Namibia looking for all sorts of things, and I found this skull, and I was like, this is it. I am so close to being a real-life Indiana Jones. And then as I was scrambling out of the cave, being chased by natives in this giant boulder and flaming arrows and spears with poison, they didn't even dip the arrows on the frogs. They just stuck the whole frog to the end of the arrow. These guys really meant business. And I'm running, and I didn't have a whip yet. I hadn't earned my Indiana Jones badge and hat. So there I am in the sun, no hat, getting a sunburn, a ragged bandana around my neck, getting chased by every possible awful scenario. And there, in a very smooth, even jog next to me, is Damian Schofield. And he's all about, like, hey, man, what's happening? I was like, hey, I'm so close to being a real-life Indiana Jones. And then as we're running and he's explaining to me his resume and he's telling me about all the things that he's doing and why he's in Namibia and why he's been, making faces for Nefertiti and doing, like, all of these amazing things, I thought, yeah, this guy is the real deal. And I'm just, I'm almost there. I've almost won my whip and my hat and my badge, but Damian is doing it for real, or has been doing it for real, and we're going to talk more about that later. But I think he's gotten out of it pretty safe and has decided to move to New Haven, which is really cool because that's what Indiana Jones would do. Like, he would retire and he would work in robotics at SUNY Oswego and live in New Haven, and I admire that. And I'm really close because I moved to Palermo, So, yeah, so Palermo and New Haven are really close. Because today is such a special day, like every day on the porch, we're going to go right from this to talking to Damian. Why waste time? So typically, Damian, this is where I would turn to our musician guest and I would say their name and I would say, you're on the porch. But I'm going to say that to you. So welcome to On the Porch Radio Hour.
Well, thank you. I must say that's one of the strangest introductions I've ever had. Anything like this. And it did occur to me while I was listening to you that if I was running from a group of tribesmen who were firing frogs on arrows and we were running together to escape, the first thing I'd do is tell you about my resume.
Exactly. Yeah.
As we ran. It would be the most natural thing to do.
That's right. Yeah, we exchanged business cards. That's right. Let's start at the beginning because there are things that obviously I don't know, and I think that our listeners deserve to know after that introduction. You grew up in England.
Northern England, yeah.
Northern England. And you went to school in Northern England as well?
Yeah.
You went to, okay.
Yeah, near Manchester.
Okay. And you got your PhD?
Well,
no,
not that order. I come from a mining family.
Okay.
So I initially went to get a job and worked on the coal mines in England, which at that time was a nationalised industry.
Okay.
And the coal mining, the NCB as it was then, took me on as a student apprentice and sent me to college. So I first studied mining engineering long before I got a PhD.
Wow.
And became a mining engineer.
Okay. And so you were doing... okay, I'm not even going to make an assumption. What do you do as a mining engineer?
Well, I was initially a management trainee, but before you can manage a mine, you have to build up a set of production shifts. So you have to work running mining operations.
Okay.
So I did that. Well, I'd done that in England for a while, and then I went to live in Africa for 2 years and worked on different mines around Africa. So for a big corporation. So I started mining copper in open cut mines in Zambia, I worked on coal mines in Zimbabwe, sorry. Did some exploration drilling in Botswana. Had my jaw broken in Botswana, actually, during a raid on the camp we were in. And then I went down to work in South Africa, where I ran a production gold stope. I was early 20s, had 17 tribesmen working for me. So they were all Zulus. You have to have people from one tribe, otherwise the tribes fight.
Right.
So I had a tribe of Zulus, a group of Zulus working for me. And I was the guy who had the backpack full of blasting gelignite. So I'd set the explosives, light the touch paper, and we would run.
Yeah.
And let blast it's a reef of gold that we're mining. And I worked over in Namibia as well, on the Skeleton Coast, on the diamond mines over there. Wow. So, yeah, lived in Africa for 2 years doing that.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
So when you're managing this group of Zulus, did you have to have a translator, or how did that work? In South Africa, and as in many other African countries, there are multiple tribal languages as well as English and Afrikaans. Okay.
I think there's 17 national languages.
Right.
So they have a pidgin language which everyone speaks. At that time it was called Fanakalo. It's changed now. But and Fanakalo was a pidgin of basic Zulu, some Xhosa, and some of the other languages that were mixed together. But there were only 250 words and no tenses. So things became, one word meant many things. So Xhosa meant air, it meant God, it meant compressed air, it meant space. Lapa meant here, it also meant there.
Oh, wow.
And also the worst thing was counting. So if you say something like Mangaki Chela Lapa, which means how many drills are over there, they can say Meningi. Meningi means 3 or more than 3. The counting system is 1, 2, and Meningi.
Oh, wow.
So it becomes quite difficult to get things done sometimes.
Yeah. Wow. That's really neat. But so you were able to learn the language and communicate and
into a fashion, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, enough to buy things when I needed them. Yeah.
Right, and survive.
And survive, yeah.
And you survived a raid. Which is
we were. It was late at night. We were camping. Just me and a couple of guys out in a jeep. A couple of guys working for me, and we were doing some core drilling, just picking up some geological cores. And late at night, our camp was raided. I was kicked in the head while I was asleep on the floor, I didn't even see them come into the camp, but I was told I was kicked in the head, and they broke my jaw. It took me 3 days to get back to civilization, by which time my jaw had reset.
No,
and the doctors decided it wasn't worth breaking it and resetting it again, because I could still use it. So I still have my teeth at slightly different angles. My upper and lower jaw from that. So I've still got a little twinge up here sometimes where it was broken.
Fascinating. Man. And so how long after that did you keep working?
We went back to civilization. I got maybe a few days a week off, and then I was back at work.
Right.
There's not much. You're working on the mines, there's not much. Well, to be honest, there's nothing else to do. You're in the middle of nowhere. Most of the mines are in deserts or tundra the Transvaal in Africa.
Yeah.
So there's not much there.
Wow. Okay.
So there's not much to do but work and drink.
Yeah, right. Good times. Good times. So you did that for 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay, and then after that you decided.
Then I came back to England and I worked for oil companies for a couple of years. So they pay you lots of money, fly me all over the world. I was flying into oil rigs, flying into mining operations all around the world, mainly using computer software, doing scheduling and planning operations, things like that. Management stuff, just helping manage some of these operations. But all the people around me, all they cared about was money.
Right.
And I decided that wasn't going to be my life. I wasn't going to do that for the rest of my life. I just didn't enjoy it.
Good for you.
Yeah,
I can really appreciate that. Cool. So you did that for a while longer, and then you were done. Then you move on.
Well, then I decided, what is it that I've always enjoyed? And at that time, it was in the 90s, mid-90s, computers were coming up, and I loved playing on computers, so I decided to go back to college and study computers, and did a PhD in artificial intelligence at Nottingham University, which the only thing anyone ever knows about that is that it's where Robin Hood comes from.
I don't think he graduated from the university, though, did he?
Well, here's a funny story. The universities in England are split into two groups. There's the old universities and the new universities. And it used to be the universities and the polytechnics. And the government made a decision to call all the polytechnics universities as well. So they all had to think of a name. And so we had Nottingham University and Nottingham Polytechnic had to think of a new name. And one of the serious suggestions they were thinking of was Robin Hood University.
Really?
Which would have been great. Imagine the hats at graduation.
Yeah.
Feathers, having to wear tights. It'd be fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
But they never did it. They called it Trent University, Nottingham Trent University instead, which I think is way duller.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been way more fun to have said I graduated from Robin Hood. Real quick, what does artificial intelligence mean? Like, what is that?
Oh, it's a big question and a difficult one. We do this in my classes. I always say to my students that when people ask you about artificial intelligence, we often call it pub artificial intelligence or bar artificial intelligence, because whenever you say you studied it, people will ask you the question, are machines going to take over? Or what is artificial intelligence? Are machines clever? And really we're asking a lot of the wrong questions.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence really is about practical stuff. How do you think your camera phone focuses? It's an AI system.
Okay.
How do you think you optimize the power in your washing machine? It's a fuzzy logic controller. Artificial intelligence produces a lot of practical applications that we use every day. And that's what AI is, really.
Right. Nice. Well, yeah, I guess I had never thought about
what most people think about is Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, which is not what we study.
Right, yeah, exactly. And you got your PhD in that, and you then decided you weren't...
I didn't want to do that anymore either.
Yeah. Oh.
So I switched, but then the late 90s, what was really coming up was computer games and graphics.
Yes.
So for the rest of my life, since then I've worked with computer graphics and gaming systems and things like that.
Okay.
That technology.
Okay. So now I'm going to move into the area that I'm really interested in, and that is when you're doing that, you're doing the graphics and you're doing the I guess the 3D forming and production and stuff. You somehow moved into a place where you started, I guess, creating images from like you're creating faces on skulls and things like that?
It's more than that. It's I was in accident reconstruction. So after a big disaster or an accident, we use gaming technology, 3D modeling, to reconstruct and show people what happened in that accident.
Sure.
Could be a vehicle collision, could be an oil rig explosion.
Okay.
A plane accident. I've worked on all sorts of things like that, mainly for use in courtrooms to explain what happened. Mm-hmm. And from that, I ended up starting working on faces and doing a lot of work on modeling faces. Mm-hmm. And there's two real things I do there. I do the one everyone's seen from television, which is facial reconstruction.
Right.
Where you find skeletal remains and you build a face on it.
Yeah.
And the other one I do is I do a lot on facial comparison, comparing people's faces. And that's the kind of work I've done with the FBI. I worked for them for 5 years as a consultant.
Nice. And so they would... Okay, so in facial like recognition and comparison, they give you, is that, boy, this is a really layman's like naive vision of it, but like kind of like how you see, they give you the lineup.
Not
right?
quite.
Okay.
We were looking a lot at building databases of faces so that we can compare to different. Here's a comparison. When someone tests your DNA, we know that 1 in a million people have that DNA. If I measured your face, we don't know how many people have those measurements of your face.
Right.
So we built a large database so that we could start to say, well, 1 in 50,000 people have similar measurements to you.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what I find really fascinating about that? I'm going to get sidetracked here for just a second, but it really is connected. So a few years ago, I was doing an art show at a historical society in Lyons, New York.
Yep.
and their historical society is in their old jail. And they liked my artwork there, and I had done some portraits of some of the inmates that had stayed there, and I did portraits of some of the sheriffs that were more famous from there. And they said, come and work on a project with us. And I said, okay. So we were making a book, which ended up not getting fully funded, so it didn't ever work out. But they gave me access to some of their files. And as I was looking through these books and these files, they had photos of inmates, like their their profiles and stuff, but they also had the measurements of their faces.
How long ago was this done?
It was done in the 40s and 50s, maybe.
That's late. The Victorians were big on that. 1880s, 1890s, measuring people. And
yeah, it was really fascinating. I thought, geez, I don't think they do this anymore.
But they used to.
Yeah. That's so neat. And so then you could read like how big somebody's nose was and like the space between their eyes and like these crazy measurements. Yeah. It was really neat.
It's amazing. Well, when we used to reconstruct, when I first started working on facial reconstruction, most of the measurements we had, the data we had of how thick the tissue was from Victorians sticking pins in corpses and taking measurements and building tables of data, and we used that. But now we have CT scans, MRI scans, and we can collect a lot more non-invasive data, and we have much bigger data sets and much better data sets now. But we used to get all the data from old, those Victorians and their crazy measurements.
Yeah. And I, again, sidetracking, this is completely pointless to even bring up, but I read a book. This was a few years ago, and the main character was during the Victorian times, and he was born like a slave or a peasant or something, and they were keeping him in the like the royalty's house, and that was his job. Like that was his whole role, was for them to measure him and do all of those kinds of things, and the measurements that they talked about.
Imagine being stuck there having people measure you.
Oh God,
crazy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was awful. Like just the description of it. So that's kind of what that reminds me of. Okay, so you did that, and then that sounds really fascinating. And did I get it right in my introduction? Was it Nefertiti that you?
Yeah, because I do the facial reconstructions, more Indiana Jones stuff. I get invited by groups like the TV shows for the Discovery Channel or History Channel, and shows, documentaries, when they find some old skeleton they call me or people like me in to show what this person would look like to build the face. Sure. One of the most famous I've done is Nefertiti, the Egyptian queen. Interesting story about that was we went to Egypt, and the Council of Antiquities in Egypt gave us access to a tomb KV35 in the Valley of the Kings for 3 days. There were lots of really angry tourists who travelled over there to see it and couldn't get in, but we got access to it, and we carted 1/2 a ton of equipment down into this tomb. And that sounds pretty easy, but the entrance to the tomb is a tiny passageway, little hewn in the rock walls, so you're carting all this x-ray equipment down, 1/2 a ton of equipment down into the main burial chamber, and you have to climb over the traps built for grave robbers, the big pits and things like that. Now they built little bridges now, but it's not that stable, and you have to carry all this stuff across and get into the final burial chamber. And when we got in there, they then there were certain antechambers off the main chamber that were sealed and had been sealed for 100 years since the tomb was discovered, and the Discovery Channel had convinced the Council of Antiquities to open one of them. So we all crowded round this little door, and this guy went at it with a hammer and chiseled through this wall. It was so exciting. And then finally opened it up, and all this musty air came out, and we went in, and there's just 3 bodies lying on planks in this little chamber. Queen Ty and Prince Thutmosis, we knew who 2 of the mummies were. There's another mummy we didn't know who she was, but the archaeologists and Egyptologists I'm with believe she's Queen Nefertiti, which is why I had to do the reconstruction, and they were looking for other evidence on that mummy. Okay. And one of the most interesting things about that was that afternoon, we examined the mummies and looked at them, and then we had to search around the room for the missing body parts.
Oh.
Nefertiti had her feet cut off, so we had to search around and see if we could find the feet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we did find them.
All right.
Apparently, to walk into the underworld in Egyptian mythology, you have to be to gain access to heaven. You have to be able to walk. This is what the Egyptologist told me, to walk into heaven. She was obviously hated, and so they cut her feet off so she couldn't enter heaven.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's fascinating. That's so great. So now you are. So now you've done all of this. And you've been around the world, and you've done all of these exciting things, and you are at SUNY Oswego.
Well, you missed out. I went to live in Australia for 5 years.
I did miss that. And you did something with their government too, right?
Yeah, I used to work for the Australian Federal Police as well. But I emigrated, went to live in Melbourne, Australia for 5 years, and then I was... do you want to hear how I came to America? It's a good story.
Yeah, I absolutely do.
So I was working for the FBI while I was in Australia, so I had to fly over to Washington, D.C. pretty frequently.
Okay.
And I was over there, and it was July, and the summer is incredibly hot in D.C. And I was walking through D.C., I was too hot, so I walked into a bar to get a beer.
Mm-hmm.
Walked up to the bar, and as usual with my accent, a woman next to me said, "Oh, you're English." So I got to know her. We spent a night together, out in Washington, D.C., and the next day I flew back. She searched for me online and found out who I was.
Oh, my gosh.
Then she started emailing me. Then she started ringing me in Australia.
Oh, my gosh.
And a year later, she bought a plane ticket and flew to Australia to get me. So I married my internet stalker. And
why not, right?
Yeah, and within 2 weeks of her being in Australia, I asked her to marry me. And a month later, I flew back to America, and we got married in Vegas by Elvis.
Oh, that is
an
awesome.
Elvis impersonator, but...
there's rumors that he's still alive.
Well, he looked pretty real to me. But I'm not American, so I guess I can't tell.
Right? Oh, that's great. Gina and I were married with the mayor of Punxsutawney.
Nice.
Yeah, so on Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
So I can, I don't know how I can relate, but I feel like we have something in common there. Working for the FBI, I think I would feel okay having a stalker because you would be able to make connections and say, hey, is this lady cool? I want to go on a date with her, The
FBI, there's some great stories about that. It's a freaky organization, really.
I bet.
I did a lot of my work at Quantico, which is the Marine base. And that place is just so huge. I've never seen anything like it in my life. The FBI have a whole town in their quarter of the base where they train their agents. And it's a real town. There's real banks, real cinemas, real drugstores.
Oh my gosh.
And people, you can go in and buy medicine, go to the bank, get money. But you could be taken hostage at any time if they're doing a training exercise. Right. It says that in signs outside as you go in.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a strange place.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so then you marry your internet stalker, and you fly back from Australia.
I live in Baltimore for a while.
Okay.
With her, yeah.
Nice. And was that where she was originally from?
Yeah, originally from Baltimore.
Okay.
Worked in D.C. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then you moved up here.
Yeah, they offered me a job up here, and I immediately said no. It looks like a small place, middle of nowhere, And then I came for my interview and thought it was wonderful. I love the people, I love the place, and beautiful. I went back and told my wife and said, "Oh, it's great, I want to move there." And she said, "No way." So I said, "Just come and have a look." And she came and had a look and loved it as well. And we've been here 4 or 5 years now.
Good for you. And good for us, too. Like, it's really cool to have somebody like you and to know that, folks can come into Oswego County and Central New York and say, I really love this place and I want to be here. And that's the whole point.
Friendliest place I've ever been.
For the most part, I think so, yeah. I really like it here. And there's cool people like you that we can be friendly with. So this is why we do this. If for no other reason than to be able to meet folks and to hang out for a little while, Great. Yeah. You are doing robotic stuff at Oswego State.
Well, when I came to Oswego, they gave me a grant. They kind of said, what would bring you here? What can we do? And there was a grant going for getting some equipment. And I've always wanted to play with robots, so I bought 3 of these humanoid robots. They're about 2.5 foot high. And they're very advanced. They can do all sorts of fancy things. I think you've seen them dancing and doing stuff.
It's done really
pretty cool. Stuff. But we're never going to compete with MIT and Carnegie Mellon and the great big robotics places with $1 million budgets.
Sure.
But we can do things that no one else is doing. So we've been doing robot theatre. We do theatre performances with the robots.
Yes, sir.
Which is great, and there's only a few universities in the world doing this, so now we're now one of the top 5 universities in the world in robot theatre, only because no one else is doing it.
Right.
So if you choose the right areas, you can become an expert immediately.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's really fascinating. And yeah, one of the robots that we got a chance to see did some really fancy breakdancing moves.
Michael Jackson breakdancing moves.
Did the moonwalk.
You see, because I'm English, we play the bad guys in all the movies now. So I'm determined to get an army of robots to take over the world and weaponize them.
Excellent.
But my students seem to refuse to do that. They just want to make them dance. But, so I have to let them do what they're interested in.
Maybe we need an army of robots to dance and take over the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need more dancing. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the porch, Damian.
You're welcome.
It's been great to have you here, and I hope that we're able to connect again some other times.
Yeah, absolutely.
And chat.
I'm looking forward to hanging out here.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Today's episode of On the Porch Radio Hour is brought to you by Brassica oleracea. Are you tired of fighting at dinner and hearing things like, "I don't like broccoli," or "not cauliflower again"? Well, we have the perfect alternative. The all-natural vegetable substitute Brassica oleracea. That's right. Brassica oleracea has all the vitamins and nutrients of your favorite green vegetables. Don't make them turn up their noses to Brussels sprouts or hide their heads from the cabbage. Collard greens? No more an issue when you serve Brassica oleracea instead. So the next time you're in the produce section or your local farmer's market, ask for Brassica oleracea by name. That's Brassica oleracea. You're listening to On the Porch Radio Hour. We'll be back in a minute.
What's happening in Central New York is brought to us by iHeart Oswego. Open skate sessions at SUNY Oswego resume this month. Visit oswego.edu for more information. The End of the Embargo is the latest exhibition at the Art Association of Oswego. From now through Sunday, September 20th, Cuban paintings from the collection of Eugenio Basualdo will be on display. This group of paintings is diverse in subject and style, including naturalism, surrealism, cubism, and abstract expressionism. The gallery is open Saturdays from 10 to 1 and Sundays from 1 to 4 or by appointment. For more information, call 315-216-6782. Oswego State Downtown hosts Where Do We Go?, featuring the digital collages of Jeff Madison, a Syracuse-based graphic designer, illustrator, and photographer. The exhibit is open noon to 5 p.m., Wednesdays to Saturdays. Call 315-216-4985 for more information. The Port City Co-op hosts an outdoor flea market at West Bridge and 2nd Streets in Oswego on the first and third Sundays of each month from 12 to 5 p.m. For more information, contact the Port City Co-op at 315-529-5177. The next Rice Creek Story Hour is on Saturday, September 12th at 11 a.m. Children must be accompanied by an adult. Call 315-312-6677 for more information. The CNY Arts Center has upcoming classes in cake decorating and a glee club for both adults and children. The Arts Center also hosts a writer's cafe the last Sunday of the month, with the next session on September 27th at 6 p.m. and an artist meetup is on September 9th at 6 p.m. for visual artists working in 2D and 3D media. Visit cnyartscenter.com for more information. Oswego County farmers markets happen just about every day of the week. In Central Square, visit Crossroads Park Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. until dark. New Haven's Farmers Market is held at the Town Hall on Mondays from 4 until 7. Lacona's Farmers Market is at the corner of Maple Avenue and Harwood Drive on Thursdays from 4 until 7. Oswego's Farmers Market is also on Thursdays from 4:30 until 8:30 and is held on West 1st Street between Bridge and Oneida Streets. Pulaski hosts a market in South Park on Fridays from 4 until 8. The Canal View parking lot in Fulton is the home of the Fulton Farmers Market on Saturdays from 8 a.m. until 1 p.m. And Parrish also hosts a market on Saturdays from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. at the corner of Route 69 and Route 69A. The Red Room sessions at Wooden Apple Farmstead are a time for songwriters, musicians, and anyone else who wants to build their musical skill and knowledge to get together. We share songs, we are working on bounce music ideas off of each other, and we usually have time to just play a little music. This is a supportive environment where all levels of songwriting and musical experience are welcome. The next session is September 27th at 6 p.m. The Wooden Apple Farmstead, in conjunction with the CNY Arts Center, hosts the 3rd Annual Music and Art Festival today and tomorrow. The festival will begin with a Frisbee golf tournament today at 3 p.m., a songwriters contest this evening at 7 p.m., a pancake breakfast tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., and a full day of live music beginning tomorrow at 10. Art will be for sale throughout the weekend. For more information about the event, visit Wooden Apple Farmstead on Facebook or call 315-591-0711.
We've decided that because we have this phenomenal music and arts festival happening, that maybe we should talk about it. So we're going to fill some time talking about our music and arts festival. And because I'm the host of the radio show and I'm kind of hosting and emceeing the music and arts festival, I have other things to think about. So I need to have some questions answered, and that's why we've brought Renee Monet up to the microphone. Welcome to On the Porch, Renee.
Hi, Matthew.
Hey. So really all I know about the Music and Arts Festival is that I'm wearing the T-shirt right now.
And it's a mighty fine T-shirt.
It really is.
Where'd we get those?
We got those at Zinc Shirts thanks to Glenn Zanzitis and one of his staff, Connor.
They look really nice, and I heard that Zinc's going to be here selling stuff this weekend, too.
That's right. They're going to be a vendor. They'll be selling our shirts that they've helped design and make, and we're going to have somebody selling cupcakes. We're going to have somebody selling scones and tea. We're going to have jewelry. We're going to have artists. We're going to have a chainsaw carver who I think I've been able to convince to carve us an actual wooden apple.
I sure hope he's able to do that. I'm really excited.
Yeah. I've heard that he's pretty excited about that, too. So he'll be here later today. He's coming to set up, and he's going to spend the night, and he'll be here all day tomorrow. So today the 5th, Saturday the 5th, and Sunday the 6th, which is tomorrow, we're going to have music. It's going to be fantastic. So we're going to have all those vendors here. But let's talk about the people that are making it possible for a minute. We have sponsors like Zinc, who have sponsored us with things like financial contributions, with material goods, supplies, all sorts of things. And let's hear about some of those sponsors.
Sure. We actually have 20 different local businesses sponsoring the festival this year. We've got Murdoch's in Oswego, Fulton Savings Bank, Fulton TV and Appliance, Pathfinder Bank, the Oswego Bagel Shop, Old City Hall and Water Street Cafe, Green Planet Grocery, and Cherry Hill Feeds. And then we have a bunch of other businesses that have donated some of their products or gift certificates or coupons for us to use throughout the weekend and to give away to people, which we're actually, for the first 100 people that get here, everybody will get a coupon for a free movie rental from Family Video. And they'll also get, from Fajita Grill, they'll get Fajita Grill Bucks that they can use to go buy some nachos or... So in addition to Fajita Grill and Family Video, we've got Price Chopper, Cam's Pizzeria, Tim Hortons is giving us coffee for the pancake breakfast that is happening on Sunday morning. We've got gift certificates from Cupcakers and the Rivers End Bookstore that we're going to be raffling off. We've also got a gift card from the Coffee Connection we'll be raffling off. Bridge Street Pizza donated some pizza to us. The Oswego Print Shop, everybody who has seen our flyers and our posters around town, so graciously gave us those to support the festival. So yeah, it's going to be a really, really great time. I'm so glad that we've got so many businesses supporting what we're doing. Really great local business and community support. And it's really neat because a lot of those places I know, and I've talked to them, and they're sending representatives. So, we talked about Zinc is going to have a booth here, but there's going to be other people from a lot of those other sponsors that are going to be here. They're going to be checking out the music festival, making an appearance and being here and being available. And I'm hoping that people that are here attending to watch and to be part of the festival are able to connect with those people and thank them and say hello and get to know them, because that's kind of what the music festival is about. For sure. Do you know who else is going to be here? We were talking about vendors a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. The folks from the Black Street Cafe are going to be vending. Mm-hmm. And in just a few weeks, we're going to be doing On the Porch. Yeah. At Black Street Cafe. Yeah, in Mexico. Black Creek. Yep. Black Creek on Main Street in Mexico. Absolutely. Yeah. Really cool folks there. Really awesome ladies. And we're going to have the radio show there. But they'll be here, too. So I want to make sure people are connecting with them. They're the scones and tea folks, I think, right? They sure are. Yeah, man. So we've got all of this support. We've got all these sponsors. We've got all these people that are coming, and they're ready to be here. And, what are we giving them? Besides the first 100 people that show up, and we're handing them gift certificates and welcoming them here, and they don't even have to pay to get in. They don't even have to pay to get in. Right. The festival is absolutely free for everybody. We're going to start this afternoon, actually, at 3 o'clock with a Frisbee golf tournament. Okay. Folks can play on teams of 2 to 4 players. And we're asking people to make a donation to enter that tournament. And that money will help us keep the festival free. Okay. So that starts at 3 o'clock. And then after that, we've got the Songwriters Contest tonight at 7. Mm-hmm. Greg Rossblock is going to be hosting that, and he's starting at 6:30. He's going to play some of his music for us. Excellent. Going into that. Songwriters Contest, the winner of the Songwriters Contest is going to open up the festival tomorrow morning. So they're going to kick off the music for us. Okay, so they'll have the 10 o'clock slot. They actually are going to start at 10:30 for us. Okay, excellent. We've got some special guests playing at 10. Holy mackerel. I know. Is this an unknown guest? Is this a mystery guest? It's Al and Madonna Holsapple. Come on. For real. All the way from Baltimore. Mom and Pop Holsapple are going to be here doing a set. They are. Oh, that'll be cool. It's exciting. That'll be real neat. But do you know what happens before that tomorrow morning? I do. We're going to have flapjacks. We are. Pancake breakfast. Yep. So people should come out early. 9 o'clock. Have breakfast with us. Syrup, homemade flapjacks, and hang out. We're gonna have tables in the barn for $5. Where else can you get your entire breakfast? In the barn with live music. Okay, yeah. So then the music starts at 10. Yeah. So then the music starts at 10 with Mom and Pop Holsapple and the winner of the songwriter contest. At 10:30. At 10:30, and then it's a slot. Is it every half hour after that, or is it every hour? What's for a little while. So at 11 o'clock, our friend Jim Schaefer. Yep. Is going to be on. 11:30, we've got Bob Early. At noon, Shane Amering. 12:30, Michael B. Shores. And then about 1 o'clock, we're going to take a break. Let people walk around, stretch their legs. We're going to have the grill open. People can bring their own food. Sit down, hang out. Can I just talk about the grill for a second? Sure. Because I told somebody earlier today that we were going to have the grill open, and they're like, you have a grill there that you keep closed, or what does that mean? I said, oh, well, it's so we've got a fire pit
I don't really know if I want to call it a fire pit, but it's like an outdoor cook area. It's got a chimney on it. It's very farm cool. It's got a grill, and we're going to be feeding it with wood all day. Nice hardwood from the folks down the road at the lumber mill. We have all the ends that they cut off, so it's good hardwood, and you can come and cook your food over a hardwood fire. So the fire pit will be open. The grill will be open. You can come cook your food, and we'll have that break. How long is that? From 1 o'clock until?
From 1 till 2.
Okay, nice. People can walk around, check out the vendors, get some cupcakes and some scones and tea, cook their lunch.
Right.
That's awesome.
And then we'll come back at 2, and Bold Folly will take the stage at that point.
Okay.
And Bold Folly was actually on the porch just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
When we were at the Oswego Farmers Market.
Yeah.
So they'll be back with us.
These are some big names. We've got folks that have been guests on the show. We have some folks that haven't been guests on the show, I think. So this is a nice mix of music.
Yeah, so when Bold Folly wraps up at 2:35, Natalie Teresi will take the stage. And then after her, at about 10 past 3, we'll have Anastasia Poloshenski. And then Mark Wall will be on at 3:45. And we'll wrap up about 4:35 with Gina Holsapple.
And then what happens after that? There's got to be more. I want more.
Well, an open mic, of course.
Oh, of course. The open mic.
The open mic. And I heard you might grab the mic.
I may end the open mic with a story.
I think that everybody would like that.
Yeah, we'll see. I think I might be storied out by then.
That's not possible.
Probably not. So I'll probably finish. Well, I'm not finishing the night. I'm just finishing the open mic.
Right.
And then we're doing what?
The very last
the open
thing
mic.
that we'll be doing is we'll be setting off sky lanterns. So everybody will light lanterns and set them off.
That's become a really fun tradition at the music festival. It's a really
love it.
nice way to wrap up the weekend, and we end by launching some lanterns, or what are they called? Chinese lanterns? Is that? I don't know what they're called.
I think I was told they're called sky lanterns.
Sky lanterns. Yeah, that's probably a better name. But you light a little candle, and they sit inside these paper sky lanterns, and eventually they kind of work like hot air balloons, and then we watch them go off in the distance, and they're all environmentally friendly and biodegradable and not a fire hazard.
And beautiful.
They're lovely. We get some really great photographs every year.
They're beautiful.
And we've got camping, so people can come tonight and set up. And if people want to come on for Sunday, and they have Monday off, and they
stay Sunday.
They don't want to leave after the sky lanterns go off, I'm sure the grill will still be going. Mm-hmm. They can hang out until Monday.
Absolutely.
We'll be here.
Sure will.
And there will be food and animals that they can help take care of in the morning. It'll be perfect. Okay, so maybe they don't have to help, but it'll still be cool.
But if they want to help.
Absolutely. We're always taking help.
For sure. Okay, so 3 o'clock today, Frisbee golf tournament. Mm-hmm. 6:30, Greg Rossblock.
Yep.
7 o'clock, Greg's going to lead the Songwriters Contest.
Excellent.
Which I also want to mention, we have 2 judges for the Songwriters Contest. We've got Gina Holsapple, who's the musical director for On the Porch.
Yes. And
Brett Hoban, who is
the recording artist at Hoban Studios in Phoenix.
Which is just down the road.
Just down the road. He's the gentleman who's become a really good friend of ours through the recording process of several of Gina's albums, which we're in the middle of recording now. But Brett's been really great and has an incredible studio. He's a really excellent talent, and it's really great to have him here as a guest host too. He had a lot of fun last year and said he would come back. So
yep, so he'll be back. So Gina and Brett will be the 2 main judges, and then the third judge is the audience.
The audience, yeah.
So I hope a lot of people show up and be part of that process.
Yep.
And then we'll be back tomorrow morning with 9 o'clock with the pancake breakfast and 10 o'clock with the music all day long.
It's going to be awesome.
I'm excited.
We're going to have a stage. You can't miss it. It's going to be right on Route 4. It'll be a big stage right next to the road. And the barn, it's like a perfect amphitheater. You can sit. There's some good shade up there. It's a real nice country feel with some really awesome music.
And you're hosting.
And I'm hosting, so I'll be there. You'll get to hear me all day.
What could be better?
I can't think of anything that would be better than that, really.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap up this show because
I've got Frisbee golf to tend to.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, everybody, we'll see you there. November 18th, 1952. A young Tonkahogan man by the name of Tracy Hager decided that he didn't want to spend Thanksgiving at home. He didn't want to spend Thanksgiving in Tonkahogan, as much as he loved it, and as much as he felt like he could belong there. He needed an adventure. And he'd been reading in his books, and he'd been talking with some of his college friends, and they decided that since they were anthropology majors, they were going to go on an adventure. So they bought tickets, and they went in search of the wild horses that they had read about in Brazil. And when they showed up in Brazil, they were not prepared. They didn't really do all of the research that they should have because it was really hot. Because in November in Brazil, the weather is completely opposite of what it is in Tonkahogan. When you're on the United States-Canada border, it's not hot in November. It's not hot right before Thanksgiving. But in Brazil, it is. And so there they were, in their long pants and their long coats, wishing that they had done their research. But they set off with their backpacks and their water and their maps, and they were prepared for everything else. Except for the idea that folks that are obviously not from the area, walking around in long sleeves and long pants with backpacks and maps, they may not be welcome in some of the areas that they were trying to adventure through to find these wild horses. And on the first night, they were held up, and they were put in the back of a wagon, and they were brought to a little house way out in the middle of nowhere. And they were asked repeatedly what they were doing there. And they just kept telling them, we're in search of some wild horses. And these folks just couldn't understand why they would be there looking for wild horses. They weren't even sure themselves that wild horses actually existed there. But these young men were insistent that there were wild horses. And as the night went on, they went from being captives and captors to friends. And they're hanging out in this house playing cards, drinking some form of Brazilian alcohol, and talking about wild horses. And the men that started out as the captors just couldn't understand why these young men really thought there were wild horses there. And these young men really couldn't understand why these men that lived there couldn't understand that there were wild horses there. So the next morning, nursing hangovers, they left the house in search of the wild horses together. At the end of the first 4 days of living together in the wild, in Brazil, they had seen any other wild animal you could possibly imagine, but no horses. So on the 5th day, they packed up and they headed back to this little house way out in the middle of nowhere. And as they were getting ready for sleep, the men that were the captors said, we're going to take you to wild horses tomorrow. And so these young men were a little uncertain and confused and excited. So they went to sleep. They didn't sleep well because they were really excited. And the next morning, they got up early, before the sun even came up. And they ate a big breakfast, and they piled back into this crazy wagon, and they were towed way out to another little house in the middle of nowhere. But at this house, there was an enormous fence. You could stand at one end of the fence and not see the other end of the fence. And all inside this fence were horses. And these men said, you want wild horses? Here you go. And they explained to the young men that these horses were brought here to be broken and trained for walking around ranches, for herding cattle, for towing wagons, for plowing fields, for trick riding, for rodeos, you name it. They were trained right here at this tiny house with the big fence. So the young men walked into the fence, and one of the men that owned the ranch came over, explained who he was, pointed at one of the most beautiful horses and said, there's your wild horse. Go get it. And he handed them one rope. And these young men broke off on a run while all of the other men rolled in the grass and laughed and laughed. And for a full day, these young men tried to capture the horse. And of course, at the end of the day, they were no farther along. So again, the next morning before the sun came up, Tracy decided he was going to get up, and he was going to go out, and he was going to tame this horse. This was his wild horse. This is what his friends referred to as his white whale. He was going to win. And as all the other men woke up, they walked out and saw Tracy sitting on the ground. And the horse they were trying to capture the day before with one rope, was standing there with his neck stretched way out and down. And it looked for a minute, from the angle that they were at, that horse and man were kissing. But as they got closer, they saw that Tracy was merely sitting with his legs crossed, his hands in his lap, gently blowing into the nostrils of the horse. And all these men were asking, "What are you doing?" And he never answered. He just slowly reached out his hand and touched the inside of one of the front legs of the horse. And then he reached out and touched the inside of the other leg. And then he slowly stood up. And the horse's face stayed right with his. And Tracy stepped to the side. And the horse turned his head and followed him. And Tracy stroked the horse's neck. And then he rubbed his hand all the way along the side of the horse, walking slowly. And then he walked behind the horse and rubbed his hand all the way back up to the horse's neck. And the horse never moved. And these men were astonished, because this was one horse that they thought nobody would be able to tame, which is why it was so funny to send these young men out there with one horse thinking they were going to tame this wild horse. And here's this one young man sitting in the middle of this field full of horses, blowing into the nostrils of this one wild horse. And in one swift moment, Tracy went from a gentle standing position to on the back of this horse. No saddle, no reins, just his hands gently touching the sides of the neck of this horse. And the horse just stood there, and these men were astonished. And the oldest of all the men, beaten by the sun and the wind, took his hat off and dropped it on the ground and gave one slow wave. And Tracy knew instantly what that meant. And he nudged the horse and patted it on the side of the neck, and the horse turned in a complete circle and walked off over the hill with Tracy on his back. And for the next 2 hours, this whole group of men just stood and stared at that one small spot where Tracy disappeared over the horizon. And they all just stared. And every once in a while they'd look at each other and smile. And they baked in the sun, especially these young men with all of their long sleeves, their long pants. And eventually, in almost exactly that same spot, reappeared horse and man, walking back. Tracy gently slid off the side of the horse, walked by the men, never said a word, hopped the fence, and walked into the house. And of course they all ran after him. And they were asking him all sorts of questions. And all they could say was, "I heard once from one of the village elders that that's all you needed to do. Just talk to the horse, walk beside it, let it get to know you, and blow in its nostrils. I have no idea why. But it worked." So of course the next morning, when everybody woke up and they were packing their things because it was their last day in Brazil, Tracy noticed that one of them was missing. And so they all went out, and sure enough, there's another young man. One of Tracy's friends is standing there, blowing into the nostrils of another wild horse. One that the other men said was going to be the next most impossible horse to tame. And they thought, no, this can't be. And sure enough, eventually this young man hopped on the back of the horse. But the one thing he didn't do that Tracy did was spent time with the horse, just sitting. And that horse took off and it bucked, and it kicked, and it jumped, and it ran. And the look on the young man's face as he gripped with white knuckles to the side of that horse, the look on his face was enough to make half of the men laugh and the other half of the men run for rope and whip and barrel and board and everything they could find to get this horse to stop. And for the next 20 minutes, that young man went from sitting to lying down to hanging off the one side of the horse to the other side of the horse, never letting go. They gave him a lot of credit because he never touched the ground until the horse stopped. But when he did touch the ground, his whole body touched the ground and he just fell. And they all laughed and rolled. And he said, I guess neither the horse nor I were ready. But they didn't want to leave. They didn't want to fly back to Tonkahogan. Not because they don't like it. Not because they had decided they'd rather live in another place. But because they had found a place where they belonged. It wasn't necessarily in Brazil, but it was there, with horses, with any animal they thought, really. And the whole flight home, and then the long drive back to Tonkahogan from the nearest airport. They talked about how they could incorporate this into their work, into what they wanted to do when they left school. And most importantly, how could they incorporate this into the lives of the other community members in Tonkahogan? And a week later, Tracy walked into one of his classes, and he was carrying a sheet that looked like he had wrapped it around a big board. And we walked out in front of his class, and he let the sheet drop to the floor. And what he held in his hand was a beautiful painting, a painting of a horse that looked like it was almost jumping through the sun. And the horse, the colors, the muscles, the perfect detail. And riding on its back was the shadow, just a silhouette, almost a dark, misty ghost outlining a young man. And Tracy held that painting, and for his presentation, all he did was hold that painting and smile and sing, "This is my home, this is my only home. This is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. And should I stray in the dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. Rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden." And there it is, one more incredibly successful episode of On the Porch Radio Hour, where bugs find their homes in the back of my throat. But me and my new resident would love to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank Damian for being an incredible guest, and I hope that you come back either as a guest or a storyteller or something, even if you just come to hang out, because it was a ton of fun having you on the show, and I hope your students have as much of an excellent interaction with you as we have, which I'm sure they get. But I want to thank everybody that's going to be here for the music festival this weekend. I want to come tonight. Spend the night, have breakfast. I'll be serving flapjacks. I might even wear an apron, you know? Come check me out. I mean the music festival. Come check out the Wooden Apple Music Festival. And the vendors, and everybody. Because I'm always so proud to be here. And I'm really excited to have you here as well. And until I see you later, peace to your journey.
On the Porch is a production of the Wooden Apple Farmstead with host and writer Matthew Wood. This week's sound technicians are Gina Holzapfel, Ray Monet, and Matthew Wood. Our stage manager is Ray Monet. This week's special guest is Damian Schofield. Find information about past shows, being on the porch, and much more online at ontheporch.weebly.com.